but they press through the mess, bounce checks, and wonder what's next. In the heights, I find my coffee and I go. I find my coffee and set my sights on only what I need to know. I need to know in the heights.
One day, I'm hopping in a limousine and I'm riding away.
I had always wondered, you only have so much, there's so many songs in the Broadway show that you only have a very little bit of time to get the stuff in the scenes. But I just always personally wondered, like, okay, I get Vanessa has maybe a dysfunctional home life. But I also want to know not just what she's running away from, but what she's running toward, like literally what's her dream? I was always very curious. And I also wanted to give Usnavi's like head over heels for her. And he can't, it's like, he can't even like say a sentence around her. And I wanted to know, like, how strong a woman, does he just like her because she's hot? And if so, that's kind of lame. I wanted her to be a woman with a vision and that he sees that vision. And so I imagined her doodling. I imagined her being an artist, and that when they were in school together, he would see what she would doodle in the margins of her textbook. And he'd be like, she's amazing. She's brilliant. And that's why he really, like, he saw that in her. So that was some of the seeds of those changes in Vanessa.
It wasn't like today, you'd say, paciencia y fe. Paciencia y fe.
My first draft of the screenplay had Abuela Claudia taking the subway. And when you're going through the subway tunnel and the mirrors are dark and they're very reflective and you pass the lights and there's things going by. And I imagined that as a screen that her memories of Cuba were playing on in kind of a black and white, grainy, dark detail. That was in my first draft. So I was already imagining that this subway ride for her is not just getting from point A to point B, but is in a bit, it's a moment of reflection. It's kind of a time machine that travels her through her memories. And then that became more and more so as I developed draft after draft. The tunnel was Jon's idea when we did the location scout, and we went and looked at that tunnel. And then Jon was like, there has to be a whole long tunnel sequence.
Yeah, that one, we wanted to take more of a contemporary ballet approach. We broke up the two worlds. We had the old school Cuba world, and we had the old school New York world, because we wanted to show those two journeys and what it might have felt like, as she came from Cuba to New York. And so we created a little bit different styles. So Ebony Williams, is from the contemporary ballet world. So I lean on her a lot for some of the contemporary movement. And then, I work a lot with props. So I wanted to make sure that it almost felt like a storybook, without going too, because everything, there's like a corny line that we just didn't want to ever cross. And it's like, well, we don't want it to feel like a completely different world. But, the furthest away from anything that we can. This was the number that we had the most liberty to do that.
And I will try to make my way out west to California.
It was really this idea that when you fall in love, gravity goes away. And of course, Royal Wedding is always an influence in anti-gravity dance numbers, but this one to be outside, to say you could do Fred Astaire outside on a fire escape. And what did the fire escapes turn into? We did an experiment with Chris Scott, our choreographer, and we just took everything and put it on its side, benches, and put them on their side, or these sort of bench and tables. And we used it as if they were the edges of a fire escape. And it became oddly like a ballroom in this beautiful, and so it was a Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers number.
We were originally going to have dancers on the wall come out of windows, kind of like a level up. Like in our minds, it's like, okay, let's take it to the next level. But then you realize very quickly as you're doing it, you're like, that level doesn't help. It actually distracts. It's not about that level. It took away. So we stripped it down and went right back to just Corey and Leslie.
It's interesting, like the movie's coming out at a time where it feels like it was built for this time, but in a way we were building it for a timeless truth of struggle for all minorities, and especially the Latinx community. And the amount of times that they feel powerless, the amount of times they have to pick themselves up again. And who do you turn to but your community to pick yourself up and have pride no matter what? How appropriate that now when this movie is coming out, that it's going to be Washington Heights that shows the world how to pick yourself up again, because they've done it so many times, that leads you out of the darkness into the light.